The Nuggets practice in their first postseason practice, and we'll talk about what they had to say, what the vibe is, all that, and more. Plus, the Minnesota Timberwolves lose one of the most hilarious games ever. They'll face the Oklahoma City Thunder. We'll talk about the possibility of both of those teams being Denver's opponent as we go through the play-in tournament on this edition of Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're available on all platforms, whether you want to check us out on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you want to check us out on YouTube, best way for you to support the show, just go hit the subscribe and like button over on YouTube. You can join the live show, hang out with us in the comment section, join all sorts of folks hanging out with us on the daily. We appreciate you guys being part of our community. Today's episode is brought to you by HelloFresh. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. And that's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Go to HelloFresh.com/NBA60 and use code NBA60, NBA60 for 60% off plus free shipping. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer from the Action Network. Joined by Adam Mares. He's director of content for DNVR. Check out the pre- and post-game shows over at DNVR. You can also go check out over on the old YouTubes the interview that they had with Calvin Booth, who hung out with him the other day. Lots of cool stuff in there as the fellas got to hang out with Calvin Booth. Check out all the great stuff at DNVR. Adam, on today's show, we'll talk about practice, which you were at. I was not able to make it because I was writing about a million things and podcasting.
Hold on. We have a Red Bull check. Are we?
No.
Oh, okay. Respond. I mean, it is 11 o'clock at night.
There comes a point where I have to force myself to slow down, or there's going to be problems with the old ticker, and I don't want to have a heart attack. So I got to I'm trying tonight. The goal is when I finish this podcast, I got to finish 1.5 more columns, and then I'm going to get some sleep. So I'm managing myself. I am enjoying a nice watermelon Gatorade though, which these are amazing. So let's start here. Practice today. I got the quotes that everyone shared on Twitter, the usual assortment of folks hanging out and sharing the quotes from practice. I will ask you though, because you were very curious about this. I want to know, I need a vibe check, my man. What were the vibes from the first day of practice? I mean, honestly, it's weird to say, but it's my biggest takeaway. This felt like, and I can't remember, I think Aaron Gordon is the one that said this, but he was right. He rightly assessed it. It felt like training camp, which is to say it felt like the end, like one season had ended and another one had begun. And I think the vibe was up. Players were upbeat. You could just tell there was energy in the room. You know, sometimes you walk into practice, you know this, Matt. Sometimes you walk into practice, there's just no energy, and you're like, okay, I could tell what it is. Today was a day that the team just had a lot of energy to them and a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of excitement. And I joke about this, but I'm also being serious. Jokic was smiling and laughing and having a good time. And I'm telling you, there was a long stretch over this last 6 weeks where every time I saw him, whether it was in the hallway, whether it was at practice, or whether it was on the basketball court on my TV, where he just didn't look very happy. And today it looked like the team was, okay, we're finally here. We're feeling good. That's another note out of it, but it just was a good vibe. It's no longer bad for you to try. This is really how the NBA regular season is like, if you're trying in the regular season, you're wasting energy that you need for this time. Yeah. And now you get to go. And now everybody's like raring to go and ready to go. Jamal talked about the hand, said that it was still bothering him. Are you concerned about that? I mean, I am. He didn't seem too concerned by it, but both he made reference to, it really hurts. And then Malone said something about every time he catches it, you can see him wince, like every time he catches a pass. And I'm just thinking, like, that doesn't sound like a small thing. That sounds like a major thing. But, obviously he's played through it. He's made shots through it. And he didn't seem to make it seem like it was a big deal. There wasn't a giant cast or wrap or anything like that on it. It's just a thing that he's going to have to probably deal with. And one of those things that he'll probably deal with for the entirety of the playoffs. It'll probably be something he feels, during games. But he didn't seem to think it was a big deal, even if he did say it was still in pain. Okay. Everybody else seemed pretty healthy? Aaron Gordon was the best. And we talked to him today, and he said that over the All-Star break,
every time he breathed in, his rib would pop out of place, which I can't tell if that's an exaggeration. These how players are. They don't like to tell you what their injuries are or anything till well after. But he said every time he would breathe deep, his rib would pop out of place. And so he said it was a lot of pain. But he said it's night and day, and he kind of had a big smile about how great he feels right now. He had a calmness to him and an excitement. I mean, this is what I would say. The Nuggets seemed excited, which is not what I would have expected to say about them. Like, they have not looked excited for 2 months. They looked excited today.
I was genuinely like expecting more of like, well, we got to get through this first round, and then we got to get through the second round, and then maybe we have a chance to make the finals. We just got to get there. But instead, like, if they're like, here's the thing. 12 wins, and they're in the finals for the first time. That's it. That's what's in their way. They need 12 wins.
12 seems so small compared to 16 for some reason.
So they need 12 wins, and they're in a spot there. Michael Malone spoke to the media. What was your big takeaway from Malone's commentary?
From Malone, just again, they had a team dinner last night. It sounds like it went really well. And again, everything seemed like a real reset for the team. Just like a real, all right, guys, we're through that. Malone, it's funny how Malone was throwing fits over the last week of the regular season, calling guys soft, this or that. Today, he broke the sort of fourth wall, so to speak, and just kind of admitting like, hey, we haven't been very focused last month. Like we've been prioritizing rest. I can't remember the way he would always frame it in a way, but it means the same thing. We haven't been trying. We haven't been putting forth our full effort. He said, but you look at it now, we're here. Guys are healthier than they've been in a long time. They're rested. And so I kind of feel, in a weird way, I think it was nasty business what the Nuggets have gone through in the last month. I'm sure they didn't even feel good about it. But I do feel like there was a sense of breathe out, look around, we're healthy, we're complete, and we're the 1 seed. Like, everything is good. It didn't feel good going through it, but everything's good now. And I just felt like that was it. The one thing I'll tell you about practice, though, is he said that they're going full intensity, because he said we shut it down, but we're done with – he said something, we shut it down because we didn't want to get hurt, something to this extent. But we're not going to shut it down anymore. Like, even in practice, we're going 5-on-5, we're going hard, we're going full speed. And he's like basically saying we'll risk it for the next few days in practice, but you have to. Like, we can't rest all the way up till game day.
I agree. You do not want to go in like a slow ramp up and then just all of a sudden get there, because whoever you're getting, and we'll talk about this in the second segment, you're getting a team that's had to absolutely fight and claw in this last, not just 2 games, like 3 or 4 games. Like, these teams are battling, and those teams are dangerous when they come in that kind of mindset. Like, they are accustomed to it. They are in that mode. It could be an advantage when you have like, a rest advantage, and they should have an advantage there. They are the 1 seed, but it's just, I agree with them going full speed and ramping it up now to get everybody going. Like, if there's injuries, you can't hide guys forever. You just can't. You cannot protect everybody forever. You got to risk some of this. This is sports, right?
Right. And I think that's what these practices seem to have represented, was like, hey, let's go at each other now. Let's be a little bit more intense. And I don't know, it was a good energy. It was just a great energy. In fact, but I laughed because Aaron Gordon, he had several quotes of the day today. One, he says you can't turn – he was asked about a switch, and he said, I don't think you can turn it from off to on, but you can turn it from on to up, which I thought was funny. I don't know what that means for the Nuggets, because they sure seemed like the switch was off, but maybe they're turning it on now, and then when the game starts, they'll turn it up. I don't know. Yeah. But he also said that it was a great vibe. Last night's dinner was a great scene and a great vibe, which – only Aaron Gordon can pull off that one.
It's true. It's absolutely true. All right. So are you satisfied and encouraged, is accurate to say, by what practice seemed like today?
100%. And like I always say that Malone, oftentimes you can tell how practice went by what mood Malone is in. And Malone was in a great mood. And he was even, you know how it is, Matt. How many guys are at practice on average, media guys?
8-ish.
Yeah, there's about 20 today. And, some first-timers in the local media, and they all have some of the questions that, drive Malone crazy. And, even Malone today, in moments where had that happened on a day when he was really down, he would have snapped, we don't know. And like, he handled them with like, I'm in too good a mood to allow that stupid question to get to me. And I thought it was, like I said, a very, very encouraging day to be at the gym.
Excellent. On the other side, we'll dive into the play-in tournament games. We'll start with the Lakers and the Wolves. We'll get Adam's reaction to not having to face his absolute worst nightmare, as well as what it means if the Minnesota Timberwolves were to advance on Friday. Later on, we'll get to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who toppled the Pelicans, and what that means, and why I think this is how things broke in an optimum way for the Denver Nuggets. But first, I need to tell you about the ultimate basketball GM game. The Ultimate Pro Basketball GM game is the coolest game that you're going to have played in a long, long time. If you've always thought that you could be a great NBA GM, well, you should play it and find out. It may not be that easy. If you had the same thought and you fantasize about managing your own basketball franchise, go and download Ultimate Pro Basketball GM right now. This game allows you to manage every strategic aspect of a franchise, playing through seasons and leading your franchise and fans to glory as you build a historic dynasty. In the simulation, you're responsible for dealing with challenging personalities from players and coaches, hiring the right coaches and assistants, trading and training players, making the right draft picks. Good to be a situation like OKC where you have 700 options, navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft and all the ups and downs of multiple seasons. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Pro Basketball GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. Locked On Nuggets listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probasketballgm.com, scan the code, or look it up in the app stores. That's probasketballgm.com. Ultimate Basketball GM. Start your dynasty today. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and being a part of our day. Adam, there's a question from Bubble's Buzzer Beater. What's your favorite guitar you got in the background?
This Gretsch, this beautiful electromatic Gretsch back here. You can barely see it. But
Woo!
gorgeous.
Woo! That's pretty.
Sounds great too.
All right, so let's start here. The Los Angeles Lakers and Minnesota Timberwolves played a play-in game on Tuesday night, and it was pretty hilarious. You know,
real quick, John Steigman's asking if any national media know. There will be some for the playoffs, but they're not going to arrive until Saturday, probably. Yeah. Maybe Sunday, to be honest. They will be here, but
not yet. There will be a couple of reporters that'll probably be assigned to the Nuggets. Also, The Athletic, I believe, is assigning somebody.
So. Tony Jones. Resident Nuggets hater Tony Jones.
Tony Jones. Tony Jones. He gets to see MPJ's development up close and personal. I'm excited for that.
Oh man.
So I love Tony. Tony's good.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So I have a little bit of a different take on how the game was hilarious. It was a terrible basketball game. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
The Lakers?
Yeah. I wanted to say that the Wolves, I don't think people really understand how much that it just seems like everything kind of goes against. They were up against so much in that game. They played that Pelicans game, which was a really tough one that they had to come from behind to win. Then they lose Gobert and McDaniels in that game. 2 days rest. They're on the road in LA. No Gobert versus Anthony Davis. All of this stuff happens. And Ant, I'll just say it. I believe Ant got hurt in that game. I just think everyone's no, he just sucked. And I'm I don't know.
What did he hurt?
What
did he hurt?
A shoulder. So there was some treatment that was done on it. And that's the word is he got hurt, which I kind of believe. So I don't know what condition he's in for Friday night's game. That's an important question to kind of ask. Steve Wynn says Cat disappeared in that game. So a lot of that is I'll say you're right. The problem, honestly, is that Cat has developed so much as a space big that he didn't work enough on his post-up moves. So he can't punish switches the same way that Nikola, Joel, or any of the top centers can. He doesn't have that capacity. His footwork inside isn't good enough. And that's a bummer because Cat has a lot of flexibility, mobility, and good footwork, but he just hasn't worked on that part of his game. And to me, that's a part of that's a player development let down by the Wolves, to be perfectly honest with you. It was interesting coming out of that game because everyone was very high on the Lakers coming in. And after that game, everyone's oh yeah, they're not very good. Everyone kind of realized oh yeah, they had a good run after the All-Star break after the trade because they played a bunch of crap teams, but that team's not very good. And LeBron did not play. He's doing the same defensive stuff that he was doing in Cleveland, which is bad.
He's hurt, man. This is the thing about watching that game. I kind of wanted the Lakers to fall to 8 and play them. LeBron is not healthy.
No.
That's why I look at that. I'm picking Memphis in that series. I don't think that the Lakers are very good or very deep. And that was, I said this on DNVR, but that game specifically, I mean, the game today I thought was well played. Yeah, I don't think either team today, the Pelicans or Thunder, are great teams, but they played well or whatever. Watching that one, the last play-in yesterday, I just thought these are play-in teams.
Yep.
These aren't non-play-on. These are not unlucky teams that fell to the play-in because of circumstances. Those were play-in teams. And I think that's the thing that we keep wondering, what will it be like when all these teams have to elevate? We've seen what Denver's try-hard floor is, and it was well above what we saw from either of these two play-in games.
Yeah, I agree.
They're not try-hard floors below it, but their try-hard floor is well above what we've seen.
Yeah. I want to ask you this. You've been concerned about the Minnesota matchup. Do you feel the same way after that last performance?
Again, concern is like, okay, do they present challenges? And I still think, like, they didn't have Gobert, they didn't have McDaniels, and I do think there's something to scouting a team when you don't know who's going to play. I just think that's hard. Like with New Orleans one, I would have been worried about the Zion factor, the Alvarado factor, just in the chaos that an underdog doesn't have to worry about what if this screws us up. They can just say, hey, chaos grenade, Zion plays with the bench. Let's see what Denver does. And then you're hoping that Jeff Green guards Zion Williamson and on bench staggered minutes. And it's just chaos. It could be chaos.
Yeah.
So and that's what Minnesota represents. But if you tell me, like, should Denver beat them? If Denver lost to Minnesota or Oklahoma City, it would be a disaster. That would not be a, man, this team isn't as good as we thought they were. It would be something went really wrong here.
Many people are getting fired. Many people are getting traded. Like someone's going to emergency, someone's going to jail. That's what happens in that situation. So a couple things there. I think you're absolutely right. Like the Nuggets are just like, you kind of realize like the Nuggets are way better than these teams, and they've kind of proven it. You eventually are. Like the record is, you are what the record says you are. There are exceptions to that, but I do think that for the most part that's accurate. Part of this too is the Wolves hung in that game and had a lead in large part because they bombed from three, which that was like the exact right. That was the 100% right game plan versus the Lakers. Is you want to beat them with the math game. Is they don't take any threes, you want to hit them. You want to hit a lot of them. And like Finch, my take on Chris Finch is, I like the way his teams play. I like the overall structure. I think that he manages matchups well. I think he attacks pressure points well. But for whatever reason, and I actually pin this more on the players, this team is absolutely horrific in clutch time situations in any high stakes game. We saw it last year with Memphis where they just whizzed down their leg. They could have won that series. Like they had Memphis on the ropes and they let them go. Like they let that team off the hook. That's kind of a problem when you're facing a team in Denver that has been absolutely lights out in clutch time. Now, historically, clutch time stuff in the regular season doesn't translate 100% to the playoffs. But to me, in this specific instance, it's that I do not trust the Wolves' poise, and I trust the Nuggets' poise very much.
I mean, no question, that's one of the big battlegrounds, right? I think you have to feel good there. But I do think just the losses that they've suffered also make their roster nonsensical. I mean, I don't think that Gobert and Anthony Edwards can both succeed. You're probably going to lean more on Anthony Edwards than you are Towns. And I don't think that the Wolves have any chance of stopping Jokic. They probably don't have it either way, but they probably don't have any chance unless they play Gobert. So there's just this weird thing where I'm like, they have a lot of question marks, and I don't think it would be good. And also, Anthony Edwards is a really good player, and I think he's going to be a great player. I still don't know. Him and Towns both, I just don't think are getting 4 wins off the Nuggets. I would be very surprised.
The two big lineup, I think it can cause some problems because it means that AG can't guard Anthony Edwards. Like that would be my ideal, is that you have AG to guard Ant. I like that matchup quite a bit because he's so physical.
Yeah, but Ant, I do too. But Ant also doesn't play well with 2 bigs on the court. Like this, sure. That's the thing is you're taking a thing that they're bad against everybody with something that might challenge Denver in a way, and also, by the way, might not.
I do think that, don't be surprised, by the way, Finch did this in a game versus Brooklyn a week ago. He actually benched Gobert down the stretch. Yeah. And especially after this latest incident, like he is more empowered than ever if he needs to. Finch will bench Gobert in a way that Quinn Snyder could not in Utah. That just wasn't the same situation. So
probably especially now, like
Yeah.
you almost have extra.
yeah.
Oh,
So like this is to me, that's a key component here is, that dynamic. I'll go back and look at if they do advance on Friday. I'll go back and look at why the Wolves were able to get the advantage over Denver, but we know that some of it was just schedule stuff.
some of it's also just Thunder stuff. Like it's Denver gives what they need to get a win out of a team off of a team.
So you feel like, I guess here's my big question though is, do you feel more or less confident in the Nuggets versus the Wolves than you did a week ago?
Oh, way more. I mean, a lot of this is, again, like we said, it's hard not to see the forest or it's hard to see the forest for the trees when you're in the middle of a month-long slump. And by the way, let me say this, Matt. This is another one of my takeaways because we both flip sides of this argument, curiously enough, about whether or not March/April basketball matters. And I will say this. The Lakers had the number one defense after the All-Star break and were playing very well when they had their guys. And one theory about that is, well, they had more to play for. Your theory of whatever team's more motivated usually wins. You watch them in that series or in that play-in game, and you go, that's not the best team in the NBA post All-Star break. I'm sorry, they're just not. Like they're not. And then so then you take the inverse of that and think, well, Denver hasn't been good, and it's like they're not the bad version of them. They're just not that good. Yeah. So all of those things combined for me over the last couple of days, you look at it and you go, okay. These are probably what I originally thought they were.
I agree with you. I agree with you in totality on that assessment of where both teams are. Like I think the Lakers. That said, I do have to ask: are you relieved that's not the Lakers?
You know what? No. Like part of me thinks, I love it. Here's why. I went on Anthony Irwin's pod. I think it's going to come out tomorrow. And one of the things he asked me that very question, just like, Nuggets dodged a bullet. And I wanted to be like, no, they didn't. Lakers dodged a bullet. Good luck in Memphis, man. Like that team is not good. There's a lot of guys that when you watch them, you're just like, okay, so Rui Hachimura now has to make a bunch of corner threes. Come on, man.
I love it. You're back in. This is great. This is good to see. This is exciting. On the other side, we'll talk about the New Orleans Pelicans versus the Oklahoma City Thunder, what the challenges the Thunder might present for the Nuggets in a first round series. We'll get to all that, plus a little bit of talk about the Pelicans in the Western Conference. We'll do that when we return. But first, I need to tell you about FanDuel Sportsbook. Grand slams, no-hitters, and double plays are back. There's no better place to get in on the MLB action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can step up to the plate with a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, sign up, place your first bet, and get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if you don't win. You get how about Aaron Judge to pick up where he left off with a home run, or a pitcher to go over on strikeouts? Betting baseball is one of the most fun things in the world, especially during day games. So make sure to check it out. Don't miss your chance to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Bubbles buzzer beater has me laughing.
Yeah.
So
this is an interesting meme the chat has taken with you, Matt.
I can't say I hate it. Can't say I hate it. Not a big.
You have to watch the show on YouTube in order to get.
Understand. Yeah. So, all right. So the Oklahoma City Thunder get the win versus the New Orleans Pelicans on Wednesday night, ending the Pelicans season. Pelicans were the #1 team in the Western Conference. Zion Williamson gets hurt. They lose their minds for a month and a half. They really just fell off the cart completely. Then Jose Alvarado got hurt, and they limped to the finish line, made a little bit of a push over the last couple of games, had some momentum, but they got caught tonight by Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who was absolutely phenomenal, as well as Josh Giddey, who is very underrated. I don't have anywhere else to do this. Can I rant a little bit here?
Please.
Rockets fans were pretty obnoxious about the Thunder when the Thunder got beat out in the lottery. And it was like, you were like, oh, you think you're all big, like a great organization. Well, look at us. We got Jalen Green. I would rather have Josh Giddey 7 days a week over Jalen Green. This is not even close. Big time plays by a player that actually knows how to get his teammates involved. Aussie. Oi, oi, oi. That's a well-run organization, top to bottom. 2 years. They were in the playoffs. They were in the playoffs in the bubble, 2020. 3 years later, they are on the verge of being back in the playoffs. Next year, they get Chet Holmgren. They have 100 picks. That is a great run organization. I just need to get out. OKC is an awesome organization, top to bottom, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the man. That floater he hit, the late game stuff was so great with Lou Dort guarding Brandon Ingram and Herb Jones guarding Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. This is the stuff that makes the NBA awesome. It was such a great game. I'm very excited for the Thunder future. What do you think?
I mean, I look at the Thunder, and I love that team. I love interesting players. Shai is such an interesting player. That bucket he got, I think the last one where he left, right? The way he just contorts his body on a dime, he's unbelievable. I'm with you. I love Giddey's game too. And then I think Jalen Williams, to me, actually both Jalen Williams are really interesting players, to be honest with you. The thing I wonder, I don't want to call it a gimmick because it's not a gimmick, but the Thunder play kind of a unique style of basketball. They just have a lot of drivers, a lot of dribble drivers. And I don't think it's in this moment, a threat to Denver because I just think the talent discrepancy is too big. But I do wonder what the future is of that team, as they continue to add talent, because it's this very weird 5-out, everybody dribble drive attack style that I don't know. I'm just kind of curious to see. I don't like when the NBA gets offenses like this because it just feels a little too gimmicky for me.
Denver is much better than OKC. We've talked about this. These teams are in the play-in and the gap is wide. I'm not disputing that. I will say that if you're asking me who I think Nuggets fans should root for, if you ask me that question, I would tell you should root for the Wolves.
Why?
So you just mentioned dribble drive penetration. What's been the Nuggets what is
drives? Yeah,
Bruce Shai or Giddey driving past Bruce Brown because they have a couple of inches on him. The Nuggets overhelp because they want to be helpful defenders. Actually, by the way, who I say does a lot of what Denver does, even though they're an elite defense and Denver's not, is the Cavs. I'm doing all this work on Knicks Cavs, and the Cavs play really aggressive at the level of the screen, but they also bring a lot of help. They want to crowd guys as soon as they get into the paint. But the problem with that is Julius Randle shot 43%. He hit 15 threes versus them this year, because of all that help that they're bringing. There's a lot of times in the NBA where I firmly believe you just need to be no, we're going to play this straight up. And if my guy gets beat, that's fine because it takes a tough move from a good player to do this. We'll accept that versus, I got to help my guy out because he's in a tough matchup here. Oh, I gave up an open three. To me, that's a very big thing in that series with OKC is they're going to beat you at the point of attack because they have guys that are really great athletes. And Jokic is not an elite rim protector, so they will challenge him. And OKC, I think Denver can win because the Thunder don't have a center. They don't have one, right? So Jokic will dominate that series offensively. But the Thunder will be able to put some pressure on guys, and I think that Malone called it playing that team's like a root canal because they're disciplined with. You're right that they play a different style, but they play it very disciplined, and I think that's one of the reasons why they're able to be successful.
They're smart. They have smart players. They have a very smart coach. I mean, that's the one thing about OKC that I think is much tougher. And in the playoffs, it's probably meaningful. I do think that Day-Not is a smart coach and would probably scheme very well. I think that team would come up with the toughest possible things for Denver to overcome. I love this comment, though, from Dylan Stone, Matt. I think OKC will be a better tune-up for the Suns. Absolutely. This is actually a really good point. The Wolves, with their bigs and just kind of the way they play, not really dynamic other than Anthony Edwards, are not really dynamic backcourt players. I kind of agree with that. Whereas with OKC, you got to guard, man, and you have to guard one-on-one, which is what you're going to have to do against Booker and against KD and against Chris Paul. So that's a really good point, Dylan. Day-Not is an innovator, though. He really is, and that's what I'll tell you what, man. They were up. They up double figures in the fourth quarter, blew it. They're a team of 19, 20, 21-year-olds.
Yeah.
And somehow Day-Not saved his timeouts. How many coaches would have wasted all of their timeouts when they blew a 10-0 run in the fourth quarter, just
burn through them
one after the other, just burning them? And somehow he used one, let the rest of the whole quarter play, and he had 3 timeouts, I think, in the final stretch there, and they were all important.
I talked with OKC's G League coach last year at Summer League, and he talked a lot about Mark Dagnall in terms of how even keeled he is and how he maintains you need to not overreact because of having a young team. You've got to be the one. Sometimes He said, like, if you have an older team, like sometimes you gotta be the one that light the fire. But if you got a bunch of young guys, they're gonna bring that energy and emotion. You've got to be the one that's very even in order to balance it out. I want to ask you about this. David Shea asks, perfect series to go zone on D. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're right. I mean, they're not a particularly great three-point shooting team. I will say that Denver has not been very good in their zone. And I think that the Thunder are very smart for their age. I mean, they're a smart, high IQ team. So, but it's probably something that if you get in that series, Denver's probably mixing in some zone quite a bit.
Yeah, I think it's really good, especially because they don't have a center that can flash to the middle and break that up, right? Like they don't have that kind of player. So I think that would be pretty key. There's no one really for Dort to defend. They would stick him on, I guess, Jamal.
Who?
Dort.
Oh, for sure. But
Okay.
that is one wrinkle here. Shea and Dort, both Canadian with Jamal. Like they're all in the same circuit of, I'm serious. Like that, there's a familiarity there amongst all those guys that is like a little bit unique.
It's a fun little narrative to talk about. So
we should always do our shows at midnight. This is
I have a lot of energy because I'm just really excited for the playoffs. Like there's stakes, like teams are trying. This is like reinvigorated me.
It honestly, I'm with you, Matt. Like part of this end of the season, really, I told you this offline, but it really broke me in terms of like.
You know what though? You know what's interesting is it's not just you. Seth Partnow literally said to me, like, this regular season has broken me.
Yeah.
Like there's just a lot of people that are just like, we got to do something because these
the train's off the tracks, man, and like nobody's acknowledging it. I feel it's a little crazy.
But we're here and it should be good. Okay, so between the two, I'll ask you, which do you think that the Nuggets should prefer the Thunder over the Wolves? I know it doesn't matter, but this is what we're talking about.
I know, I understand. I think you want the Thunder. I think the Thunder are the lesser team with more holes and more ways to exploit them. I also, whenever you ask me these questions, Matt, when you're trying to pit two teams, if it's close enough, my default always comes down to one thing. What is the easier matchup for Yoke? And for me, is the easiest one is OKC. And I always come down to if push comes to shove and you just need your best player to go out and win it, Jokic should be able to do that against both teams. But I think against the Thunder, it's like for sure he can take it to Jalen Williams or JRE or whoever it is they throw, Saric.
That's really interesting because I think I go the other way. Where I have such faith, I'm just like, it doesn't matter. Like you can put Rudy Gobert 3-time defensive player of the year on Jokic, and I trust Jokic to do this thing.
It's hard
for me. I'm like, how can you optimize the rest of them? Like I worry about things like if Jamal has to face a player. Who was it that like there's somebody that he guarded in the last month that like really gave him trouble?
Dylan Brooks, and then he went off in the fourth.
Yeah. So like those types of things, or if there's a combination that could give MPJ trouble, I don't know what that is because he just like I really don't honestly know what a bad matchup for MPJ looks like on the offensive end.
Like guarding him?
Like like somebody on the
Mikal Bridges.
Yeah.
Norman Powell. Like he has been shut down. Like I mean, he has been shut down by guys before, so it is possible. I think Aaron Gordon and Jokic both have good matchups in that OKC series, and that's pretty predictive of how good Denver will be. If those two guys have good matchups, usually they win. By the way, Jokic's stat line against the Thunder this year, 24, 13, and 12 on 68% shooting.
God.
And that, by the way, remember, those are games where we're like, why isn't Jokic playing harder? 24, 13, 12, 68% from the field, or 68% shooting.
If Nikola Jokic was ever like, you guys take me for granted, I'd have to be like, yes, we do. That's absolutely true.
I think if you play Oklahoma City, Jokic's average is 30, 15 rebounds, and like 8 assists, probably.
Yeah.
It's probably somewhere, maybe 31, 32. Like he just scores a lot. Shai Gilgeous is probably 35 points a game.
What do you think about the Wolves Thunder matchup?
I think the Wolves should be favored slightly. I think the Wolves are the more talented team that should win. I kind of think the Thunder will win, though.
Oklahoma City is the 4th best team, and really when you get into like how many times they've been it, they're really the 3rd best team in ATS percentage on the road. They're a great road team. I had +5.5 tonight, admission. They are, in fact, 4.5-point underdogs to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Notably, they were bigger dogs to the Pelicans than they are to the Wolves.
That's wild to me.
So, I mean,
without Jaden McDaniels, with Rudy Gobert having to come back after punching a teammate, like,
hey guys.
yeah, that stuff is also weird to me. I'll take the Thunder. You know what? I'm going to pick the Thunder.
Okay.
I'm going to pick the upset.
It'd be a really fun series with OKC. Division. Somebody know this. Division teams. It's going to be a division rival either way.
Man, I didn't think of that either. Actually, now that you mention it, so that would be really interesting.
Old
I
friend
will
Tim
say,
Conley.
What's that?
Old friend Tim Conley, potentially.
That's the other reason I probably would prefer OKC. It's just there's just a little bit of weirdness to Chris Finch, Tim Conley. I don't know. It's a little weird.
Realistically, it's just that I don't necessarily like. I don't love that narrative, and it's just going to heighten the conversation around
totally
a lot of things that have been outside of teams' control this season. All right, so that's playoff prep day 2. As we continue here on Locked On Nuggets, tomorrow we'll be back with reactions from the next day of practice.
Jokic is going to talk tomorrow. Ooh. Excited for it.
That should be good. We'll get you updated on all that. We'll talk more about what we think about these matchups and potentially the first round opponents. I want to get into some of the ideas from Adam about some of the other playoff series and what he thinks about those as well. Make sure to check out DMVR for all sorts of great content across the Colorado sports landscape. I just came up with that phrase. And check out the podcast, the video shows, all the great content. Are you doing the list? Are you doing film study?
For the playoffs, I will. We'll see if I'm able to get to any kind of preview.
I hate that. Yeah, I will say this. As much as it sucks for the Nuggets not know who they're going to face until Friday night, also sucks for us because we're just like, can't provide analysis when we don't know what it's going to be. So, yeah, but we'll have all those and more. I will write a series preview for whichever team comes out versus the Nuggets. I'll have that over at Action Network. If you're interested in betting the NBA playoffs at all, make sure to check out Buckets. It's my other podcast, and we have series previews up on all of the other series so far. I am ahead of the game in my podcasting this week. I got to catch up on the writing side. Adam, have yourself a great night. Folks in the chat, have yourselves a great night. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.